You will hear a lot of people say you should max your 401k, and I get why. On paper, it sounds like the responsible move, but in real life, maxing your 401k is not a small little checkbox. In 2026, maxing your 401k means putting away $24,500 before employer match. That is not skip Starbucks money. That is my paycheck definitely feels different now money. So I do not think the real question is a 401k good? The better question is, should you max it, just contribute enough to get the match, or maybe not contribute at all yet? And the answer is annoying. It depends. And we will talk a little more about that as these are going to be the deciding factors. It depends on your employer match, your debt, your emergency fund, your taxes, your goals, your timeline, and honestly, your behavior, because personal finance is not just math. It is also whether you actually leave the money alone. Some people are fine having money in a brokerage account and never touching it. Other people say this is long term money. And then 3 months later, that long term money becomes a new couch. And I am not judging. I am just saying the brokerage account has a sell button. And some of us should not be trusted with buttons. So before we talk about maxing anything, we need to talk about the three basic choices: contribute nothing, contribute enough to get the employer match, or max the account completely. And I think people online jump to that third option way too fast, not because maxing your 401k is bad, it can be great, but because max it skips over a lot of real life stuff. Max it skips over things like credit card debt, no emergency fund, a tight monthly budget, saving for a house, having kids, wanting to retire early, or just not wanting every dollar of your future to be locked behind retirement account rules. So, first, let's talk about the employer match. This is the part where I am probably the least flexible. If your employer offers a match and you can reasonably afford your basic life, I have a hard time finding a reason to ignore it, because the match is not some random gift. It is part of your compensation. If your employer says we will match part of what you contribute, that is money connected to your job. It is part of the total value of working there. That is why people call it free money. Now, technically, it is not magic money. You still have to contribute your own money to get it. And every plan has its own rules. But if your employer is willing to put extra money into your retirement account because you contributed, that is hard to ignore. For me, that is the first checkpoint. Not maxing the whole account, not trying to be perfect, just asking, am I at least getting the match? Because if the match is available and your basic life still works after contributing, skipping it can mean leaving part of your compensation behind. And I don't love that. Now, let's talk about why maxing it can actually be powerful, because I do not want this to sound like I am anti 401k. I am not. There are some real advantages here. First, the contribution limit is much higher than an IRA. So if someone is trying to save a lot for retirement, the 401k gives them more room to do that. Second, depending on whether you use traditional or Roth contributions, there can be tax advantages. With a traditional 401k, you may lower your taxable income today. With a Roth 401k, you do not get that tax break today, but qualified withdrawals later can be tax free. And third, the money comes straight out of your paycheck. That part is boring, but it might be one of the biggest benefits, because the money is gone before you really get a chance to argue with yourself. It never just sits in checking. You do not have to wake up every 2 weeks and make the heroic decision to invest. It just happens. And honestly, that is kind of beautiful. Boring, but beautiful. A lot of retirement saving works because of systems, not motivation, because motivation comes and goes. But if the money is automatically invested every paycheck, you do not have to feel inspired. You just have to not mess with it. That is one of the strongest arguments for the 401k. It creates a system, and systems beat motivation. The 401k also creates roadblocks, and roadblocks can be helpful if you put money in a normal brokerage account. That money is flexible, that is good, but it is also dangerous, because if the money is easy to access, it is easy to justify touching it. You tell yourself this is long term money, then the car breaks, then the dishwasher dies, then something comes up with the kids. Then you say, I will just pull a little bit and put it back later. And sometimes that flexibility is exactly what you need. But too much flexibility can prevent growth. This is where the 401k can help. It puts more friction between you and the money. That can be annoying, but it can also protect you from yourself. Like if you struggle to leave money alone, those restrictions might help. They make the money harder to touch. And for some people, that is the whole point. That is not just a math issue, that is a behavior issue. But there is a flip side. Too many roadblocks can also become a problem, because life does not care that your money is tax advantaged. If you have no emergency fund, no cash buffer, and every extra dollar is going into the 401k, you might look responsible on paper, but in real life, you could be one surprise bill away from credit card debt. That is where I think max your 401k, no matter what becomes too simple. Because yes, retirement saving is important, but being cash poor is real. If you are maxing your 401k while carrying high interest debt, or you have no emergency fund, or every month feels like financial Jenga, then I do not think the 401k is automatically the first problem to solve. There is a big difference between I am pausing contributions because I am stabilizing my finances and I am not contributing because future me can deal with it. Future you is already tired. Do not do that to them. Now, what if you really need the money from that account? People bring up plan loans here. And yes, some plans allow loans, but this is not as simple as it is my money, I will just borrow it. Plans do not have to offer loans. And when they do, there are limits. Usually the loan is capped at a certain amount. The general limit is 50% of your vested balance or $50,000, whichever is less. And in many cases, you have to pay it back on a schedule, usually within 5 years. So, yes, a 401k loan can be a backup door, but I would not make it the plan because if you leave your job or the loan does not get paid back correctly, it can turn into a much bigger tax problem. The better plan is probably having an actual emergency fund outside the 401k. That way, if life happens, you are not treating your retirement account like an ATM with paperwork. Now, let's talk about early retirement. This is where the conversation gets more interesting because a 401k can absolutely be part of an early retirement plan. But if every dollar you own is inside retirement accounts, you may run into a timing problem. The age people always talk about is 59 and a half. Take money out before then, and depending on the account and situation, you may be dealing with taxes, penalties, or rules that are much more annoying than a normal brokerage account. Now, that does not mean the account is bad, it just means access matters. Now, to be fair, there are ways people plan around this. Some people use something called 72T. That is a rule where you may be able to take early withdrawals under a strict payment schedule. Some people use a Roth conversion ladder. That is where they move pre tax retirement money, convert pieces of it to Roth, pay the taxes, and then wait out the 5 year clock before touching converted money. So the money is not impossible to access. But those strategies take planning, they have rules, and they are not the same as having money sitting in a normal brokerage account that you can access whenever you need it. That is the only point I want to make here. For early retirement, the account balance matters, but the account location matters too. Now, what if your job does not offer a match? That changes the conversation because without a match, you are not walking away from that obvious employer money. The 401k can still be useful. It can still give you tax advantages. It can still give you a high contribution limit, and it can still automate investing straight from your paycheck. But now you have to compare it more honestly against your other options, a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, a brokerage account, maybe an HSA if you have access to one and it fits your situation. The point is not that no match makes the 401k bad. It just means the decision is less automatic. So, should you max your 401k? Maybe, but I would not start with that question. I would start with a better one. What does my next dollar need to do? Does it need to get the employer match? Does it need to pay off high interest debt? Does it need to build an emergency fund? Does it need to buy flexibility? Does it need to reduce taxes? Or does it need to be locked away? Because I know myself. That is a better way to think about it because maxing the account is not automatically good or bad. It depends on what problem that dollar is solving. The big point is this: maxing your 401k is not the only version of being good with money, and stopping at the employer match is not automatically a failure. For some people, maxing the account is a great move. For others, the smarter move may be getting the match, then building cash, paying down debt, or investing somewhere with more flexibility. The mistake is treating one rule like it applies to every person in every season of life because personal finance is personal, not because math does not matter, but because your life, your behavior, and your timeline matter too. So before asking, should I max my 401k, ask what you are trying to build. Are you trying to lower taxes today? Are you trying to force yourself to invest consistently? Are you trying to reach traditional retirement with as much money as possible? Are you trying to make work optional earlier than normal? Or are you just trying to stop feeling behind? Those are different goals and they may lead to different choices. Maxing the account can be powerful, but it should fit the life you're actually living, not just the version of finance that sounds good in a spreadsheet. Thanks for watching. If this helped, a subscribe and a like would be greatly appreciated, and see you in the next video.